Well, oh, I didn't miss. Okay. Welcome in, friends and future friends, to this episode of the Sports and the World podcast. I'm there. Hope all of you are well and safe out there. It's been a while. We're busy people. A lot of things happen, sports wise, life wise. But we're back better than ever. And of course, I have my amazing co host who sometimes takes over the show if I go off on a tangential situation. It's the amazing, it's the wonderful Haley Murphy. And how are you, my friend?
I am great, LaDarius. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. So much to talk about, so little time, as they always say. Um, well, let's just jump right into it. Let's talk the NBA playoffs. For the East, the Knicks took care of the Sixers. I just felt the Sixers, they took all the energy to beat the Celtics, and then the Knicks just kind of, I don't know if it's the year or not. I don't want to upset Knicks fans one way or the other. But and we have the matchup that's I think is very important to you. We have the Cavs and the Pistons. Cleveland getting the win overtime, and I can already see the look on the face. So what I'm going to do is is basically see what your thoughts are. Are you frozen? I think we're yeah. I was like, oh, there we go, there we go. Because you were talking, I'm like, oh, when I talk Pistons, I'm like, oh, she froze. I'm like, oh no, I thought something happened. I'm like, but so I'm curious to get your thoughts on, and then well, I'll talk about that West. Well, we'll get to the West, but I want to talk about the East first. Um, Cleveland, Detroit. How are we feeling ahead of tomorrow evening? How are we feeling?
Well, right before we hopped on, I did see a little rumor that the Cavs have a little stomach bug going around the locker room, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But no, you know, I think the Pistons do best when their backs are against the wall. I think we saw that in the Magic series, and I think we're going to see that over these next two games. I think this series is a little bit more interesting than people expected. Um, I always say, and you can attest to this, I always say we're just happy to be here, but I think that Detroit isn't just happy to be here. I think they're actually finally competing, maybe not to the level that we know that they can compete, but I think that they're, digging deep and getting that, gritty Detroit sports, mentality. But I think the Pistons' athleticism is really showing up in this series, and you've got the physicality of Asar and Cade, and I think they're really stepping up and showing out and making this kind of an up and down series. I think that Cleveland has the most reliable half court offense in the series, and that does matter late in games. But I think Detroit's advantage is the fact that they can control pace and pressure. They're forcing those turnovers, but they're also getting those easy points. We've seen a lot of mistakes come from Cleveland, a lot of messy plays, a lot of lazy passes, and I think if Detroit can kind of capitalize that on these next two games, use these losses as motivation. I need Jaron Duran to get it together, but I think that they can pull it off, and I am one to stick with my team. So if the ship goes down, I'm going down with it. But you know what? Pistons in seven. Here we go.
Yeah, this has the vibe and the feel of a 7 game series, and I think, like to me, the biggest thing in this series is to me is James Harden, and then the whole narrative around James Harden, and I've said that at this point of his career, I've always felt that especially on this Cavs team, he feels better as a facilitator, but he did a lot of the scoring too, and and I just look at Detroit and I go, like you mentioned, like Jalen Durant is an X factor. I do believe in that. And I also feel that, kind of for a bit that Duncan Robinson was, he didn't play. But I just look at this series and I go, this can go, this can go 7. Because I just feel that when I look at both teams, I look at both coaches, I like both coaches. But specifically, I just look at like James Harden, and he's having to change the narrative how he's in the playoffs. And I feel that him stepping up in the playoffs, not to knock Donovan Mitchell or any other like Struth or any of the other guys, but and now look at this Detroit team. Like they were a number one seed in the East for a reason. And people will look at that Magic series and go, oh, well, they were down. Well, listen, they found a way to come back and beat the Magic, and that's what good teams do. Yeah, it looked bleak, but that's what great teams do. They come back and they figure it out, and I think they figured it out now. And they're playing this Cavs team who it feels like this series. It kind of feels that like it feels like yeah, there's like you mentioned like maybe there's no pressure, and I think that's when you feel no pressure, you play a little bit loose. You know, you play a little bit looser, and sometimes we've seen turnovers, but I just this feels like a 7 game series. It really feels that way because I just look at both teams and I go like the X factor for me. Like I look at James Harden, as I mentioned, and Jalen Durant. Like it's I don't know whether it's because of Evan Mobley or whether it's because of Jared Allen. I don't know, but I think if you get Jalen Durant, if he can figure it out, and because we know Cade is Cade, and we know Tobias Harris, he can step up and he can have big games. If Jalen Durant can have that game, this that to me is the game changer. Because if we can get Jalen Duran to kind of, I'm not knocking him, he's a great player. You know, kind of get him more involved. I don't know. I'm not JB Bickerstaff. That's his job. He gets paid millions as a head coach. That's not my purview. But I see this. This feels like a seven. This feels like a 7 game series because like look just look at the game. Like when it goes to overtime, like both teams want this, and I can't see like where the advantage is because home court advantage. My biggest thing is that for Cleveland it's worked out. We've seen it for Detroit. Maybe it's not that. So I just think there's maybe a little bit more pressure on Detroit simply because they're the 1 seed, and people expect the 1 seed to go, to win it all. But I think when you face tougher competition, especially the East has gotten a little bit better. I wouldn't be shocked if this goes, Detroit take care of business tomorrow, and we go to 7. That's my I don't know if it's a hot take, but it's a take nonetheless. And we shift out west, similar situation out west where OKC just swept the Lakers. A lot of questions for LA in the offseason with LeBron and figure things out. But then you got the Spurs up 3 games to 2 over Minnesota. And before I get your opinion, I'll just say this: the fact that Minnesota is in this position given all that they've kind of went through, they're getting a little bit healthier. I think it's kudos, to them and the coaching staff there. But I look at this series and I go, even when Victor Wembanyama got ejected, like the guard stepped up, Vassell, Castle, like they stepped up, and I just kind of feel that I can see a situation where I think San Antonio kind of can close this out tomorrow night as well. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this series.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen Minnesota's defense just kind of step up. They're pretty much, the best defense left in the playoffs in terms of, well-roundedness. They're holding teams to one of the lowest field goal percentages in the postseason. And I think that that's really great. But then you've got Wemby, right? And Wemby isn't just really playing well. He's exceeding all expectations. He just had a 12-block game. And I think that's historic. That's amazing. And teams are actively trying to avoid the paint because of him. And you can literally see teams change their offense. And I think that that's contributing offensively. He's contributing defensively, but he's also contributing offensively. Scoring, his spacing, forcing mismatches. I mean, it's, he's playing at a level that I don't think that we've seen him play in a minute. But I think that this comes down to who can out defense almost, each other. I think we're watching one team have elite defense, but then we have another team using their strengths, whether it be the length and the height of players or whatever, But I think in terms of who's going to move on to Oklahoma. I would love the Spurs. That's my dream, right? I would love the Spurs, but I can see where Minnesota pulls us through. But I think that if OKC meets Minnesota, I think that it's going to be strictly offense versus defense. And it'll be more so of a question of can Shea break down one of the best defenses left, right? And I think that it's going to be either that or whether Minnesota can keep OKC out of the paint, which, that's what Wemby's doing to them. So I guess it really is, best of that. But in my ideal world, right, I would see OKC play the Spurs. I would see the Spurs, make it out. Obviously, in the East, I'd like the Pistons to make it through, but the Knicks, man, they're on fire. They're on fire, and I don't. I think that judged on this past season or this past series with the Pistons and the Cavs, I'm not sure either one of them can really take down this magnetic and on a trajectory Knicks team, But I think this postseason, I think, is one of the most fun that we've seen in a while. We always talk about how there's always a super team in the playoffs, and I think that this is one of the most well balanced postseasons we've seen. I think every game is kind of determined by the flip of a coin. I think we had 25 lead changes in a game. We saw, like, that's crazy. That's insane. And I think that this is really finally a postseason where everybody can, enjoy it, whether your team's in it or not. But I think that every game is something special to watch. So.
Yeah, I agree, especially when you talk about the Spurs. It just feels like historically they've always been a great defensive team. And when you go back to the Tim Duncan and David Robinson days, where they're great defensively, like they can score, but they're just a very good defensive team in those Popovich years. And and I think just for Minnesota, like I said earlier, like the fact that Minnesota is still hanging around, given and they're getting healthy, I just look at this and I go, I can see San Antonio and I can see OKC, and that's going to be. I think you're going to get two stars of the league. You're getting Shea, and you're getting Wemby. Just like you talk about the Knicks. There's something about this Knicks team, and I think especially like with Jalen Brunson, he's heard the narrative. I think out of all the teams in the play, I feel there's much more pressure on the Knicks, given the fact that they fired Tom Thibodeau, not because of a losing record, not because he was terrible, because maybe he wasn't the coach to get them to that summit, to get them to the NBA Finals. And you bring in Mike Brown, which I kind of question. I'm not gonna lie, I love his last name, but it's like, is this the guy? And I feel like there's more pressure on the Knicks to kind of get through, and they're playing in a way that, and then once again, and they're going to face a team, a very well rested Knicks team is going to face Cleveland or Detroit. It's going to be physically beaten, and maybe throughout the course of the series, maybe either one of those teams who wins either Cleveland or Detroit will get rested. But I just feel like for the Knicks, like they have to be on a mission. Like they have to go to the finals because you have to justify firing Thibodeau and bringing in Mike Brown. And when you have people say, "Oh, there was Mike Malone there, and he went to UNC," so I just feel there's more pressure on the Knicks out of all the teams remaining in this series, or in the playoffs, I should say. And we have a couple in the chat. We got John saying, "What up, LaDarius and Hailee? How are you, John?" And then John says, "Tribal Chief, I acknowledge you. Thank you. I always love that. I have the belt, so clearly, like Roman, you're not going to see me till probably SummerSlam. So yeah, I fought at Backlash, and I'm like, yeah, contractually obligated is the word I heard, and eh, I was like, yeah, as long as I come out okay and rest. But and then we have Christian Carverson, hello, Ladarius and Hailee. How are you, Christian? Hope you are well. And shifting gears, we're going to talk a little WNBA. The season's young. Um, and I kind of want to talk about. I don't know if you saw where all the WNBA GMs had the survey, and they were asked, I think it was like 40 questions, but there are a couple of questions that stood out to me. And so they asked the question. The one question is who they think is going to be WNBA MVP. And 60% said Asia Wilson, 33% said Stewie Brown Stewart, and you had kind of Caitlin Clark was there, and uh, Alicia Gray from the Dream was there as well. And then I'll just read it out because there's a narrative, there's a point to it. Trust me, I hope it is. And they asked, well, who do you start a franchise with when these teams were asked, and they went 33% went with Paige Becker, Caitlin Clark at 20%, tied with Asia Wilson at 20% as well. Now, this time last year, Caitlin Clark had 50% of the vote in the very same poll. And then you shift to who's the best point guard in the WNBA. It's Chelsea Gray. They had at an astounding 73%, Clark 20%, and they had Paige at 7%. And I said, and there were a couple other ones. It was basically feeling like basically what the GMs were saying is that we really like the Aces, and we kind of like Paige over Caitlin Clark. And I'll say this, I'm here to get your thoughts because as someone who writes community, and people are like, why don't you comment on Twitter? Because to me, I do because I tell people Caitlin Clark fans are just different because these fans showed up as soon as she was drafted. That's when they all came in, didn't know really nothing about the W, and were saying, "Oh, she's great, and she's the best player in the league." I'm like, you gotta calm down, like we gotta chill. And I feel like what this poll was saying, it's not saying Caitlin Clark is going to be a great player. She's going to be she's going to be great, but there's a reason why, and maybe it's the UConn bias. With Paige Becker, it's like the GMs are saying to me, the biggest thing is that they were willing to still start a franchise with Asia Wilson, a four-time MVP, and tied with Caitlin Clark. And people say, well, age and things go into it. But the fact that more teams were saying they feel the same way about Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark building a team, and Paige is out here getting 38% of the vote, it's telling me that Caitlin Clark fans just need to relax. Because I just feel that there's this, like I said, there's this narrative. And if you say something negative about Caitlin Clark, it just feels like, oh, you don't like her. No, I'll say this and I'll get your thoughts. I had somebody, it was on Twitter, and not saying I don't like getting arguments on Twitter, first and foremost. But this person had the audacity, the nerve, and the temerity to tell me and to compare Caitlin Clark to Diana Taurasi. Now, mind you, I'm a Sue Bird person. Like they both look like I'm not gonna disrespect Diana Taurasi, but I just when I said how did you get there? It's kind of like when you do a long math problem. Like, hey, how did you get to the answer? And basically, oh well, Caitlin Clark is. I'm like, bro, it's like it's like, oh well, Diana Taurasi. I'm like that lets me know you don't know ball. You just say that you showed up when Caitlin Clark got drafted and she held up the Indiana Fever jersey at the draft. That's when you started watching the W. If you were not watching the product, or if you weren't even a fan of the product, you wouldn't say it. Unbiased, as much as I like Sue Bird, I can see the argument where people can tell me that Tarasi's there. I think what Asia Wilson has done, I think she might be the greatest player in the history of the league by the time she's done. So you got to remove that bias. I think with Caitlin Clark fans, it's just the bias, and I feel that this this WNBA with the poll of these general managers, you know, what they're saying is that we know Caitlin's the future, but when we look at Paige now entering her sophomore season, like she it's like she could be not saying I'm not going to dare say better. I don't want Caitlin Clark fans coming after me, but I think it's saying is that listen, we don't hate Caitlin, but we have to chill and understand that Caitlin's going to be great. The Fever are going to be great. I like that Stephanie White, the head coach, and they got Kelsey Mitchell. You got Aaliyah Boston. They're going to be fine. But people are like, we got to chill. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on the survey, Kate Becker, Caitlin Clark, whatever in that realm, I give you the floor.
I'll be honest, that doesn't really surprise me. I feel like out so when you want to talk about the starting a franchise one, I think that that one's the most interesting, obviously. Um, I think what we're realizing, or what outside of people like you and I feel like we've always felt this way, but I feel like a majority are now realizing that the likability of a player on the court and off the court 100% affects the team as a whole, whether it be um, revenue, whether it be in wins. I mean, it affects a lot that goes into a sport. And I think Clark is becoming very polarizing in that sense. We can blame her fans for that. I'll be honest with you, but also I was talking about this the other day. She kind of doesn't help herself. I think that there's still things that she can come out and comment on, or she can show a little more personality. I think the only thing that we ever really get from her is when she's yelling on the court. And sure, that's cool and all. We all can praise um, you know, being aggressive and passionate on the court, but we don't really get anything from her off the court. So that kind of makes everything else amplified, because if you're not willing to speak on something, I think that it kind of takes over. And again, I am speaking mostly off the court, just because I do think that that plays a bigger role than I think most people think, into thinking that somebody wants to start a franchise with somebody. I also saw the most marketable WNBA players. I don't remember the list exactly, but Caitlin Clark was like fourth or fifth. And that was very shocking to me, in the sense that, we always see that she's got these brand deals or she's on all these commercials, right? But when you think about it, it's that perception. She is very polarizing. I mean, you can kind of say the same about Angel Reese, but I think that that polarization really only comes from like the Caitlin Clark storyline. And then, you've got men talking about her rebounds all the time, but whatever. Um, but I think Paige Beckers is really coming out and one performing, right? She's keeping with her skill set and her talent and her numbers that she had in college. She That's translating into the pros very well. But she's also, she, at least to me, it seems like she's would be a great teammate. I would love to play with her. And I would love to support her, right? I love Paige Beckers. I think that she just has so much depth to her, and it makes it a little bit more fun. People always want to say, well, sports it's a business and all of this, but it's also, I think that what appeals to a lot of people is the humanitarianism behind it. When people show their personalities, when people, do things outside of their comfort zone, and expand outside of just the sport, I think that that draws people in on a different level, and it plays an important part. So I think Paige has that kind of leg above. But Asia Wilson was number one for marketability, by the way, and I thought that that was brilliant. I've been seeing her on a lot more, partnerships and ads and stuff lately than I have previously, and I think that that's wonderful. But yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. Is she great? Yes. No, like no one's saying she's not, but I think that she attracted a very um, obsessive and loud fan base, and she'll do with it what she pleases, I guess.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because you mentioned something, and I think that it has to be talked about because you mentioned the social aspect, and I think that's very important because here's the thing: from a social aspect, I truly do believe that uh, Angel Reese and Asia Wilson. I believe there are players well ahead of her in that category. While I understand why the league I get it, but I think to me that's probably her Achilles heel is that it's the social aspect. And I'm not saying that she has to go out and you know g- you know go somewhere dance and do whatever. I'm not saying that. I think to your point is that with the WNBA, it has become more of it's a vocal league, especially with social issues. And when some people perceive silence as being complicit, and while I understand why Caitlyn is was that way in college, the WNBA is different. It's a different beast, and the reason why I think people talk about Angel Reese is that you can't talk about her game because she was literally doing the same thing at LSU, putting up double doubles. It's like, oh, missing shots, and I'm like, you got to stop
So
because she's marketable. She's much more marketable than Caitlin Clark, and people don't want to hear that because when I'm on Instagram, I see Angel Reese. She's marketing. She's putting her because you have to look at yourself as a brand. Like you're a person, but you're a brand, and you have to represent something, or you're going to represent nothing. And I'm not saying Kaylin Clark holds a press conference and talk about social justice issues. No, excuse me. My thing is that it's just her personality. It turns a lot of people off, and her fan base does her zero favor, zero. Because like I mentioned, it feels like they just showed up. The minute she was drafted, it's like if you weren't watching ball before she was drafted, and then when people come at oh, you're attacking Caitlin Clark because no, it's because you're not going to just show up and tell people like you and I to have the nerve, the audacity, the temerity, the cajon to tell us that oh, she's the best player in the league. When the last time I checked the old resume, Asia Wilson's a four-time MVP. She won defensive. She won defensive player of the year, Finals MVP, regular season MVP, and you know who did that? Nobody in the NBA did it. She did. So the last time I checked the resume, it's still Asia Wilson. And it's like, and it's no, and I argue, listen, Stewie, we're on the store. I'm not saying because I'm a Storm fan, but listen, she has championships. She won championships with Seattle and with New York. She
mhm.
helped New York get Liberty get their first championship in their franchise, and they had great all-time players. Stewie gets there with Sabrina Ionet. So, and to me, the point guard thing, like Chelsea Gray, I was just watching them play the Sun last night, and the fact the way she just passes the ball, I'm like, I'm just waiting for the pass, just like it was nothing. Like it was nothing. Me, it would have went to the fifth row, but with her, bam. And I say all that to say this is that this is not a knock on Caitlin Clark, but
Mhm.
let's not annoy people. We understand that she's seen as the face of the league, and we get that. But my argument is, and this goes on her fan base, and like I said, she does no favors for her and vice versa. What this survey was saying is that Paige and her personality fits what we're looking for. Because of what she did at UConn, her speaking at her, and at the end of the day, she's in the situation where, hey, she's essentially the franchise player for the Dallas Wings. And people understand, Caitlin Clark missed the majority of the season with injury, and the Fever did great. They lost, in the but what the survey's telling me is that we got to pump the brakes on the. People are like, oh well, Caitlin, like just because I say something bad, I'm not saying Caitlin Clark is terrible, but we got to chill and relax. We got to woosah when the last time I checked, with Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Chelsea Gray, there are plenty of players that are better than her now. And people are gonna like what I'm going to say, but we got to start wondering: is she the best player on her own team? Because people are, oh no, that's too far. Kelsey Mitchell looks doing this for Aaliyah Boston looks good. I'm not saying that she's like I'm not saying Caitlin's the third wheel, but is she the best player? Like for the Aces, I never questioned as great as Chelsea Gray is, as great as I love Jewel Lloyd, the point guard, as much as I love them. I know Asia Wilson is the best player on that team, and if Asia Wilson is not on that team, The Aces are scrapping for a
Yep.
playoff spot.
Yep.
As great as a coach that Becky Hammond is, I don't know how you can't. How do you figure it out? And then the Aces somehow got better when they added Trinity Carter. So I just like when we transition, there's another WWE topic I want to talk about. I just say this for Caitlin Clark fans, if you're listening, probably not because maybe we said something you didn't like.
Yeah,
But
probably not.
but the thing is this: nobody's knocking Caitlin Clark. Understand that you do her no favors and she doesn't do y'all no favors with the comments and with the nonsense. So she has to prove it on the court because she can't quite prove it off of it when there's a mic in her face or when her fans do her no favor. When there were accusations, like they were going after Aaliyah Boston last, and I'm like, "Where? Tell your fans to chill." Because the last time I checked, Aaliyah Boston's not terrible. I said, your fans don't know ball. I'd rather they just say, "Hey, we just started watching the W the minute Caitlin Clark got drafted." Just say that. I'd rather for to say that than to come on and say, "Oh, they like, oh, Diana Taurasi." Like, stop. They play more games now. Okay, okay. So it's not like baseball or that. Like, oh, they played the same. Oh, they played more. Okay, my guy. Like, okay, but that's not gonna make me feel that Caitlin Clark's gonna be great. But let's stop. Let's just stop. It's like let's just chill. And speaking of chilling, I do want to talk about one WNBA topic real quick before we get to the put a button on it with the NFL scheduling. Is there's always talk about coaching, and I always say is that I don't care what level it is, coaching is hard. And oh, before we get there, I just see my friend Rachel's in here. She said, "Hey friends, how are you, Rachel? Thank you for watching and listening." And there's a lot of talk with the Los Angeles Sparks, and and then the other night, uh, Lynn Roberts, the head coach, she talked about Cambry and essentially was saying that she's got to be better, which you can spin it one way or the other. But what I will say is this: my concern with the Sparks, I think a lot of fans' concern is that I love Kelsey Plum. She has no business being the point guard. Kelsey Plum is a shooter. And it's not a knock on her. And I think when they traded Rakia Jackson, you got Errol Atkins, who was great. I think that with this roster, a lot of people, myself included, listen, the season's going to be long and maybe the Sparks turn it around. But I tell people, expectations. What are just like I said with the Knicks with Mike Brown? I have the similar expectations when we talk about the Sparks. I don't expect them to, win the WNBA title. I expect them to be a little bit better. And I say that because I was reading about all these great coaching candidates, and I stand on business when I said, listen, there's Christy Tolliver who played for the Sparks, and there's all these rumors. I tell people, let's calm down, let's give them a chance. But it gives me another platform to say and to remind folks of the one person who I felt should be a head coach by now, and that should have been Lisa Leslie. And I tell people why Lisa Leslie because she has no coaching experience. Well, first of all, I'll get to that point in a minute. I'll get to that in a minute. She coached in the Big Three. And she won a championship her first year there. She coached there, I think, 5 years. But when people say, "Oh, she doesn't have no head coaching experience," well, neither did Magic Johnson, neither did Steve Nash, neither did Larry Bird. So when we talk about great players have to be assistants, there's some, like I mentioned, like Chrissy Tolliver, she played in the league, assistant, Simone Augustus, she's been a coaching. But but when I think about Lisa Leslie and Unrivaled, she worked with people like Cam Brink, Dominique Mullalong, Edsy. Like, and it's like, look, Mullalong the other night. It's like you can see it. And I always contend, and I always say, like, she's not interested in coaching the W, but I get it because the mere fact that and people are saying, oh, well, she has no coaching experience. I'm like, stop. Like I said, this is the same. I said Magic Johnson was hyped because he was a great Lakers player. Don't mean you're great. And I think people understand just because you were great one thing in one aspect of of your game doesn't mean you'll be great. Oh, great player, you're gonna be a great coach. No, like that doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way. And even like Steve Nash, oh, mild success. Larry Bird, mild success. So why not just hire Lisa Leslie? But I tell people, and I just want to say that because I got like I'm not requiring coaches not even 2 3 weeks in the season. I'm like, let's calm down, she'll adjust. Lynn Roberts has almost 3 decades of coaching experience. She'll figure it out. But I'm like, I just want to say, like, when people talk about coaches who were overlooked, Lisa Leslie, but I'm like, I can't believe that a Hall of Famer, 3 time MVP, 2 time. I'm like, she has the resume, and I go, you know what? I'm good. I'm like, I'll go outside and argue with the wind because I tell people there's plenty of but let's give it a shot because, to my opinion, I love the Liberty, but you're letting Sandy go, and she's up in Toronto. I'm like, and you hire some guy. I had to look up in the who's this guy? And I'm like, okay. I'm like, listen. Once again, I keep saying, my job is my job is in a different industry, but I'm like, but we're just hiring dudes we don't know, and we're going to ignore that. Like, and I say this, and I'm going to say this, and before I transition, is that when the league, the makeup of the league should be matched. When we talk about diversity, it's like you can't say disqualified candidates because there's Chrissy Tolliver, there's Brandon J. I just mentioned Lisa Leslie. There's many others. It's just all I'm saying is I'm not saying he's the good dude white. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying who was like nobody knew. People were like, who is this guy that's in the Liberty? You get rid of Sandy and okay. We don't know who this guy is. I'm just saying when we start looking at decision and bring the whole issue with hiring, it's just like listen, I'm not gonna fire Lynn Roberts because listen, the Liberty, as much as I love them, like if this guy's successful, he did a great job. No, Sandy did a great job. I'm not like, and you fire her, and she won, and she was the coach that won the champ. Sounds familiar to me. It's like, hey, let's fire the coach. Help you get a championship, but no, yeah, no, this guy's gonna. We're just plugging somebody we don't know. But that's the news, folks, tonight. But before we get out of here, folks, like and listen to this episode, every episode of Sports in the World podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on the social others underscore Brown on Twitter and TikTok, and they're double underscore Brown still on that fight. On I guess there's an underscore me out there, and I don't know how to feel about that. But I don't know if it's a clone or anything, but I don't like it. But all right, before we get out of here, we just talk a little bit about the NFL scheduling. Every year, like there's leagues and stuff, but I think what I'm liking is that I guess I like these international games for some reason. Because to me, you can have a great team and a bad team go over there, and somehow it feels even because there's no home field advantage.
Yeah.
So I guess I guess the games that I saw, I thought that the Chiefs are going to face the Bills. It's going to be Bears Lions on Thanksgiving. And there's going to be a game before that. Basically, the league is saying, hey, hey, make it a family thing. Like we're a family league, and I'm like, okay. It's like when they did Christmas, I'm like, man, they're really like listen, like Chris, I thought Christmas was for basketball. I learned something like not. I tell people, listen, watch the NFL, but like, is it for the family? Sure, but I'm curious to get your thoughts even on the. So we didn't talk about. We weren't here for the draft, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on anything NFL with the draft, the schedule, anything that stood out to you, anything you want to voice your opinion about. I yield the floor to you.
I think it's only right as a Lions fan that I express my excitement, but also scaredness of playing the Bears on Thanksgiving. I think that is diabolical, but also incredible at the same time. Somehow, um, the Lions, I think that they're, yeah, Um, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting season. I can't wait for it to start. But what I'm actually really excited about are the schedule reveals. I don't know if you saw earlier today, but the NFL had to come out and make a statement because it's already anticipating that teams that historically poke fun at other teams in their reveals, like the Chargers. But for instance, there it's already the NFL's already expecting teams to use the Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini drama in their reveals if they play the Patriots. And I think that's really interesting. But I also think what was interesting is the fact that they weren't willing to really police it. They kind of were like, we don't care, hands off, um, which is interesting considering the conflict of interest that is really at play in that whole scenario. But I also do do love that they're giving teams, kind of like free reign. If you want to talk about it, go ahead and make a joke. It is what it is. But yeah, I think that that's going to be exciting. What one game I really am looking forward to is the Titans and Browns game here in Nashville. I think that that's going to be a really fun game to attend. Obviously, I'll be a little biased, but yeah, I think I don't know. It's going to be fun. I'm just really excited for the schedule reveals. Tennessee Titans when they did the going on Broadway and talking to like the drunk tourists and stuff. I think that was top 10. I don't think that anybody can beat that. It was amazing. But yeah, I'm excited for that and to see what kind of drama it stirs up because I feel like every year there's always one that's like the best and then a couple that kind of reach out and go a little crazy on us and a little taboo. So I don't know. I'm excited, but yeah, I think the two games I'm looking forward to the most, being very partial, right, is the Browns and Titans game and the Lions playing the Bears on Thanksgiving.
Well, when you mentioned I think that's still the greatest. They had Harrison Butker. I don't like listen. I, between that and them asking the people of Broadway, who are these? And I forget what they said with the Jaguars. And I'm like, listen. I'm like, whatever. Like, let's adopt the name. I don't care. Like, put it in Arena League. I don't care. Just change the name of whatever team exists. And one of the things that I do like about these like is the creativity and the to your point, the mere fact that we have to have a statement to say, hey guys, it's okay to talk about that thing between that coach and that like and it's like and if you're the Patriots, like oh I get why you feel like I get it, but like listen, I now if you're like if you're playing the Patriots, like if you look at the like you're going like they're going like some teams may take the high road and go, oh yeah, we're playing the Patriots, yeah, let's keep moving. And there's some they say forget the high road, we're going to take the lowest road possible, and we're just going to use it. No, listen, do what you want to do. Freedom of speech expression, use it. But what lets me know that it's going to happen is the fact that the league had to make a statement. So maybe the league maybe saw something, maybe saw one, maybe maybe they saw like in production, they saw something, and they had to say something because they're like, okay, we're going to let this because there's no way you're going to come out and make that because they didn't do it with Harrison Butker and that what he said at the commission. They didn't say anything. They were like they didn't say a word. So when the Chargers did it, it was hilarious. Having been in the kitchen but for the fact that they're anticipating it. And that's like, listen, all I know is that you're the Patriots and who your opponents are. Like, you're going to play the Bills, you're going to play the Jets, you're going to play the Dolphins. It's everybody else. Like, it's fair game. And listen, there's 17 games. Listen, We're just going to see what teams are going to take that high road and what teams are going to say, you know what, we may take the middle road or we're going to take the low road. We're going to learn together. But the fact that the league had to have and release a statement lets me know it's like, oh man, it's like somebody's going to do something, and man, and like a part of me is like, oh man, you should laugh at that, but no, listen, I'm like, I just find it hilarious that the league had to address it because when Butker did his thing, nope, the league was like, nah, we don't care. But with Vrabel and received, like, okay, guys, we're not gonna police it. It's basically like when you know you're doing something. It's like when you see jaywalking. Jaywalking is illegal. It's like that cop that kind of goes, carry on with your day. Like that's what it feels like. You see something that's wrong, you're like, yeah, forget it. It's fair game. You're okay with it. Like the jaywalking, I don't see any cars coming. Neither direction. You're good. You're good. And that's what I feel. And now I fear if you're a Patriots fan, I know a couple. Like, look, people are very creative nowadays. And if it comes anything in the realm or in the neighborhood of that Harrison, what the Chargers did to Harrison Butker, like I'd argue Harrison Butker's never been the same. He missed a couple of picks that season. It's like it's like it's, I'm just saying, if you can get to that level, like people are very creative. That's all I'm gonna say. Now, when I saw the league make the statement, I'm like, oh, they must have seen something for them to say that because they're like they probably saw the Chargers thing like, oh, that's fine. And I guarantee you, they saw something and said, okay, because of how big and how that lets me know they saw something. They were like, I don't know, and they let it. They're like, you know what? We'll let the people decide. Which, if we learn anything in this country, that's 50-50 when we let people decide. That's all. I tell people, you take that statement with what you want. But and on that, I don't know if that's a high note. It's a note. It's a note on the scale.
No.
It's a note. I don't know if it's do, re, mi. I don't know which one it is, but it's a note on a scale. So, so before we get out of here, Haley, tell the amazing people where they can find you and all the amazing things that you're doing and anything else you want to talk
Um, you can find me on all social media platforms at the Hailee Murphy. That's Haley with two E's, and I will just leave y'all with this: Pistons in 7. Detroit, baby. I almost wore my like fake buffs. I call them my bluffs. I almost wore my fake bluffs for this, but I decided against it because I know Cavs fans are just brutal and they would just eviscerate me. So if we make it past this series, next time I'll wear them.
So you heard it here, folks. Next time, it could be next week, it could be 2 weeks. I don't know, but I'm not. I'm listen. What I'm going to do, I'm not even going to ask when she's going to do it because I like to be surprised. I like to sit back and listen. Just like the Patriots, they're going to be surprised on their schedule review. But friends, oh boy, I'm gonna have a couple of Patriot fans like, what did you say on the show? I didn't say anything. I said we got a great show. Carry on the woods here, stick around. I was doing SNL. That's what I was hosting. It's a skit, guys. It's okay. But friends and future friends, until you see and or hear us again, I'm Adair. She's the amazing Haley Murphy. Be real, be you, be blessed, and be safe. All here from the Sports and the World podcast.